Representative Matt Schaefer to speak to the LVB. I'm going to ask him to come to the witness table. Representative, how are you? Colonel, you might wait in case there are questions.
Yes, sir.
Representative, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, Speaker Strauss, members. Good to see y'all. Bottom line up front for my testimony is that this budgetary decision regarding the Guard will have the practical effect of taking that employment of them away from the next legislature. And I say that because just in the last few weeks, we've been able to get them up to the 1,000%, the 1,000 troops on the border operating at full strength on all 8 cylinders. And by every conversation I've had, they are effective. They are a persistent set of eyes on the border. They also have a deterrent effect, and they are a force multiplier for our DPS troopers. But understand the lives of the way Guardsmen work. Okay, I'm a reservist, so I can speak to this. When you send 800 of them home by January, and then begin to dwindle that down even farther by the end of March, down to basically nothing, you can't just turn around and say, oh, we now want to have this debate in the legislature and send them back. As a practical matter, that doesn't work. So you take those people, you send them home, they go back to their civilian lives, they go back to their jobs and their private endeavors. And so now, if the legislature comes forward, and maybe we've had, because of the president's executive order, had a significant uptick after Christmas, maybe some event has taken place. You know, the oil prices have a big impact on Mexico. Maybe events turn and the numbers come back up. And now all of a sudden a Governor Abbott and a newly elected legislature wants to come forward and say, it's going to take us a long time to hire these new DPS troopers. We can do the overtime, and that's great, but that stretches them a little bit. Local law enforcement, as you've heard, is already stretched. To quote Colonel McCraw, the more bodies, the more you can detect. I can tell you from my military experience, a camera is great, but it doesn't replace a brain and 2 ears out and eyes out on the line. And it's a long distance on the border. We're basically just covering the Rio Grande Valley sector right now, about 90 miles. Laredo is pretty bad, too, for some of this activity. We really, in my opinion, ought to be expanding the use of the Guard until we can bridge the gap with more law enforcement, people who are more suited for this long-term activity. Senator Hinojosa, you've made some great points. What I'm telling you, though, I would love to see an extra $30 million added to this request that you have right now, which would be about $10 million a month, which is about what the Guard is costing you, to preserve the decision on how to use the Guard for the next legislature and the next governor. Because if you just say, oh, well, we can debate that in March, no, you can't. And when you talk to General Hamilton and others, they will tell you that they would prefer that you give them some predictability so that the lives of these men and women out on the line can be scheduled appropriately. It is operationally disruptive, it's impractical, and it's just not the way you would treat the Texas military forces for us to make a political decision in March to send them back down based on political will or based on new events on the ground. So what I'm really trying to stress is that the budget number you have right now locks you into a practical course on the ground that we may regret in March. And I personally think it's a mistake. And I personally think that we ought to be utilizing the Guard even more until we can get more law enforcement people hired. Let me tell you, they are a force multiplier. Even if they are not arresting, they are eyes on the ground. They are support for a lone trooper out there on the road. They have vehicles and CROW systems that the DPS does not have to the same extent. They have some unique technical aspects to their job that the DPS doesn't have at this point. And so I think we have the potential for even more numbers to come. And until we can hire more law enforcement, keep the Guard in place at status quo, add $30 million to this number, and that will preserve the decision for the next legislature and the next governor. And then we can debate it, because I think there's a lot of things that Senator Hinojosa has said and others. that we all need to discuss as a body and make the decision whether we're going to, the guard is not the long-term solution. We understand that. Ultimately, this is more of a law enforcement capacity, but it's a long distance on the border. And out those, and we've just gotten them up to full strength. And, CRAW has been given a set of numbers to work with and says, yes, I can make more efficient use of those numbers if you give them to me as he has proposed. I, for one, speaking for many people in my district, say, let's take all the extra things that Director McCraw wants to do, plus leave the guard in place until we can see what our budget's going to be. We'll have more fiscal information at that point. And we will have not done something to operationally damage what's happening. You can't replace one-to-one, in my mind, a game camera with a sergeant, okay? Sometimes maybe the camera might be better than the sergeant, but most of the time it's not. And you can do a lot of things with the guard. They are effective at what we have asked them to do. And so I would just urge this body to not take that tool out of the tool belt just yet. Let's wait and see just a little while longer. We're just talking about 3 or 4 months. $30 to $40 million is not going to cause us that much heartburn. It's a lot of money, but it's a big priority.
Thank you, Representative. Are there additional members of the public who would like to testify? Thank you very much.